Story 1. I dated a guy whose family was very wealthy. At one point, we were all riding on his dad's speedboat on the lake by their $1 million second home. We passed a house that was larger than the one his dad and stepmother owned. His stepmother sighed softly and said, "I wonder how the other half lives. It must be nice." Story 2. The safety net. Normal people cannot mess up as much as they like without it becoming a problem. Story 3. The vice president of my company once asked why I do not hire a maid and a laundry service after overhearing me say I did not have enough free time. Story 4. If you grow up rich, it is almost everything atmosphere. My aunt's family was very well off. Her husband came from a blue-collar background. The first time he saw her was the summer after his junior year of college, when he was part of a crew doing lawn work at her parents' house. They dated very briefly and had nothing in common. He worked very hard, got a few lucky breaks, and ended up with a very lucrative job. A few solid investments later, he was worth more than my aunt's entire family. 8 years after they first met, he asked her out again. To hear him tell it, he took her to a swanky restaurant with a long waiting list that he bypassed thanks to a friend who knew the owner. As soon as they sat down, he said, "I always wanted to take you to a place like this." She looked around the room, then at him and said, "A place like what?" To her, it was just a restaurant. Story 5. Their social networks. Small example. My son just graduated from college with a degree in an unspecified field, and my golf buddy owns a firm. I will ask if he has a summer internship opening. Story 6. My girlfriend's family is well off and they have a cabin by the lake. I was talking with a friend of theirs over drinks when it came up that I, a 30-something man, have never played golf or gone water skiing. He said, "I don't understand. What did you do as a kid then?" I did not know how to respond. Growing up, I never knew anyone who had even tried either because no one could afford it. Story 7. Booking a flight on the day of travel or very close to the departure date without a second thought. Story 8. Spontaneity. They may decide to do things on a whim without much planning, confident that money will not be an issue. This ranges from impromptu fancy dinners to major trips abroad. Story 9. A friend of mine is a trust fund baby. She decided she wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail, so she quit her comfortable job, bought all the gear, and flew to Virginia. She only made it a few weeks and got bored. She came back home, and her dad found her a different comfortable job. She hasn't been hiking since. I was floored by this. Another friend decided she wanted to be a dairy farmer, so she bought a farm in Kansas and got some cows. Then she had to hire a farmhand after 2 cows died because she didn't know they needed minerals. They act flippantly without care or thought. Story 10. One factor people often overlook is friendships. When you move in wealthy circles, maintaining friendships is easier. People in those circles have the time, energy, and money to prioritize trips away together. They can meet friends for dinners because they have access to childcare and do not have to be up at 5 in the morning 5 to 7 days per week. They can outsource administrative tasks and do not have to call the electrician or spend a day taking their car to a mechanic. They have access to high-quality medical care and may spend less time dealing with health issues. They have the freedom to pursue friendships. When you are working class, you and your friends are working very hard just to survive and keep on top of responsibilities. We are all busy and exhausted, so maintaining friendships takes a lot of work and sacrifice. That is why you often see wealthy people with around 40 close friends, while working class people may have only 2 close friends and struggle to find time to see them. Story 11. This was new to me. She said she had a personal driver and, when I expressed astonishment, declared that it was pretty standard where she lived. Story 12. When someone tells their parents they want to be a musician or an artist, the parents do not ask if there is a backup plan. Story 13. Yesterday, I was explaining to someone that I am paying too much for a 1-bedroom apartment and will need to move soon. They suggested professional packers and movers. I am renting the cheapest moving truck I can and doing everything myself, as I have for the last 7 moves. Story 14. I have eaten at some fancy restaurants before, but I would like to know for whom those wine lists are made. I could fund a few months of travel with what appears to be just the drink that accompanies an evening meal for some people. Laughing out loud. Story 15. Buying a house as an investment rather than a place to live. Story 16. Paying other people to do housework such as laundry, housekeeping, grocery shopping, cooking, and yard work is common. Many assume everyone does the same, which is probably why so many think you should work longer hours or not have much time off. For most people, housework alone feels like having another job. Story 17. Parents who know how to do practical things help you fill out college applications, guide you to the right classes and lessons, show you how to rent an apartment, invest, and so on. Upper middle class children often do not realize how many things working class children have to figure out for themselves because their parents have no experience with those matters and may not be aware of the gaps in their knowledge. Story 18. I have a guy for everything. My lawyer for contracts, my suit guy for suits, and my realtor for investment properties. Story 19. People not checking prices, throwing everything into their basket, and paying without looking. Oh, how I wish I could one day go shopping without having to walk around the store with my calculator app open. Story 20. Custom builds are for items that require an expert, such as a custom chair made by a chairmaker or a custom guitar made by a luthier. It reminds me of Neil Stephenson's The Diamond Age, where only the wealthy could afford to commission rustic craftsmen to hand-make items while everyone else received mass-produced goods. Story 21. Commissioning a gargoyle for the West Tower that looks a little like your aunt but not so much that you cannot claim it is a coincidence. Story 22. I am currently working in a very wealthy household. The biggest difference for me is time. No one is rushing or in a hurry. No one is complaining about chores or laundry that will take up their Sunday with a Costco run. Story 23. Buying things that last. Wealthier people can afford higher quality products such as furniture, clothing, and accessories. For example, I am sitting on a couch that is probably 30 years old that we inherited from my in-laws, who I would describe as on the high end of the middle class. These items also circulate. When you move into your own place, a father's old friend might have a dresser or an old television that still works. Over time, people with greater means often spend less than people with fewer resources. They can afford the upfront investment in higher quality products that last and benefit from better performance over the product lifespan. For those familiar with the idea, this is a reframing of the Samuel Vims Boots theory. It applies here. Story 24. I had a garage fridge and gushers, or that is what my 10-year-old self thought. Story 25. The truly wealthy have their clothes tailored but are not flashy about it because it makes them a target. They often wear well-made garments fitted specifically to them. Story 26. Minimalism means not keeping backup supplies or anything you are not using right away, because you will just buy whatever you need when you want it. Story 27. No need to save money to buy something or for a holiday. Story 28. Receiving gifts. My car broke down shortly before Christmas, and I had no money to fix it. A friend suggested I ask everyone to contribute toward the bill as my Christmas present. I replied that no one was giving me gifts and I did not have anyone I could ask for money instead. Story 29. They do not have to think about their friends' budgets when planning dinners or holidays. All of them can afford it. Story 30. For some reason, Reddit suggested a Porsche subreddit to me for a while. A guy on there recently had a midlife crisis at 36 and posted his order for a new Porsche 911. When I asked if they realized how crazy this was, the replies were that it was only a base model 911. Totally clueless. Story 31. You want the honest truth? Speaking as someone who works daily with clients who have more money than they will ever be able to spend in a lifetime, everything. Literally everything they deal with, they do not realize normal people cannot afford. A recent client wanted me to hop on a plane and fly down to talk about a project. Hey, can you fly down this afternoon? I need to go over these design decisions. No, I cannot. And that is just scratching the surface. Going out to dinner with these people can cost me a week's pay because they insist on going to the most expensive place possible. I am not saying we should stop at McDonald's, but when my 8-ounce piece of steak costs more than $100, there is a problem. There is also a complete lack of realization that the world does not revolve around them. What do you mean insert project name here is ahead of mine? I just approved it for production. Yes, but they approved theirs 2 weeks ago. So just push mine ahead. And of course the activities. Hey, let's go play golf or tennis this Friday. I can't. I work. So just take the day off. What is one day? Could be the difference between me eating next week or not. Story 32. Vacations. I grew up in a family that was very financially comfortable. I was used to going on multiple trips a year, including several international trips before I even graduated from high school. I lived a somewhat sheltered life, surrounded mostly by friends from families in similar positions, so I thought it was normal. I remember trips to country club resorts, all-inclusive resorts, multiple trips to Disney World, and 2 trips to Mexico for my high school graduation. We were constantly traveling throughout the year. Now I am an adult who makes an average salary of about $60,000. And I never feel like traveling because my money is either tied up in something else or I feel the need to save just in case. My family went on a trip to Colorado this past spring, and it was so expensive. We had to buy appropriate winter wear because my husband and I did not own any, including good snow boots, coats, and snow pants. Airfare and food added up quickly. We could not afford to ski because a single day pass was $200, not including the cost to rent equipment. We walked around a cute little downtown hoping to find a nice memento to remember the trip and ended up only getting a single magnet for our fridge. Sometimes I get a little bummed that I have probably already taken some of the coolest trips of my life as an early 30-something. But that is okay. Traveling is a privilege, and when we have the resources to do it again, it will feel more special because it will be special. Story 33. Wait, you have never flown private before? I was surprised by the incredulous delivery. Story 34. They did not notice they had lost a considerable amount of money until months, sometimes years, later, when their manager, associate, or agent was found guilty of fraud. Even then, their lifestyle remained top tier. I am 41 and I still think about cash I misplaced in high school. I lost an American Express gift card with $80 on it and tore my house apart trying to find it just a month ago. I found it in my car. Story 35. Having enough money so you are not constantly worried about finances. Story 36. Buying new things whenever the smallest issue occurs with the old one. My dad once bought a new electric toothbrush because his old one fell behind the washing machine. He often buys expensive items, uses them for a month, then lets them collect dust. Story 37. In this thread, people are listing obvious things that every wealthy person understands. Story 38. Whenever one of those self-impressed 1%ers says that they worked hard for their money, as if the rest of us did not. Story 39. Go to college without worrying about how your tuition will be paid. Story 40. Telling others they should travel more to broaden their horizons. Asking whether others have been to a Michelin star restaurant that opened recently. Giving excessively expensive gifts and not realizing why others feel uncomfortable. Being recognized by strangers and receiving noticeably more polite service. Having a good understanding of and general interest in investment opportunities and global trends. Discarding items easily when you only want to replace them. Story 41. Rich people, especially celebrities, can cancel appearances, concerts, and events because they have anxiety and face no consequences. If a regular person calls out from a McDonald's shift because they have anxiety, they are fired. Story 42. Talking about skiing, horseback riding, yachting, and similar activities as if they are common hobbies that everyone does. Story 43. I am a Federal Express driver who delivers in affluent neighborhoods. For the past week, I have been backing my truck up to a house on a steep hill and offloading furniture for a couple who recently moved in. The husband greets me at the door every time I arrive. The other day, he told me he thought the only thing harder than my job was him putting all this together. I am sorry you have to twist an Allen wrench while I twist my back. Story 44. Time is a resource. Lower-income people spend more time meeting basic needs. Consider travel. A lower-income person may rely on public transportation, coach seats on airplanes, buses, or Amtrak. A wealthier person may have access to a private jet. A lower-income person must go to the grocery store, shop, cook, and clean. A wealthier person may hire staff to handle those tasks and prepare meals. As a result, wealthier people have more time to live as they choose without worrying about basic survival needs. Story 45. That's their idea of what a vacation is. Normal people are lucky to get a week off and go to the beach a couple of hours away. Story 46. Being able to quickly resolve unpleasant situations with money makes life easier. If you go on vacation and your Airbnb is in poor condition, simply leave and go to a hotel. Story 47. One thing to remember. The grass is always greener on the other side. So although it might seem out of touch for someone who is worth $5 million to be jealous of someone with a $20 million house and a $5 million Bugatti, they view themselves as behind those they pay attention to. I saw this with my mum a lot. When I was 18 in 2013, I had just started university in Australia, and she had broken up with her partner and had to move out of the house she was living in. Long story short, she had limited money, and after paying rent, bills, car, and petrol, she was left with about 100 to 150 Australian dollars for food and leisure. I was working 40 hours a week and studying 40 hours a week to support myself, and my dad, my mother's ex-husband from a decade earlier, wasn't in a position to help either. Fast forward to 2018 to 2022. My dad's parents passed away, and he and my aunt inherited a house in Perth that had been bought for a $150 down payment in 1960. They sold it for $6 to $8 million and split the proceeds. I work in database systems now with a master's degree and make good money. We are both in a position to keep my mum afloat and then some. I got her a nice car and my dad pays her rent. The point is this: in 2013, when my mum could hardly afford groceries, she would tell me that people across the road got to go on holiday once every 2 to 3 years, could afford to have a barbecue with friends and to go out once a week. All reasonable things to want to be able to do in your retirement, in my opinion. But now she has money basically coming from my father and me, and all of a sudden the problems are, her 14-gram gold chain is only 18 karat when Stacy's husband got her a 22 karat one with a diamond, so she needs that. Or the Honda Accord I got her for $70,000 to $80,000 in 2020, which was financed, is not good enough because it is 4 years old. In 2013, she was driving an absolute bomb and was happy that it was getting good petrol mileage. I love my mum. She struggled to bring me up well and give me the best, so I will always be there for her. But we have had to put caps on her spending and credit card use. No matter how rich you are, the grass is always greener on the other side. Story 48. Living wherever they want. I needed a change of scenery, so I moved to Europe. I want to live in Los Angeles, so I am going to pack up my family and move. There is no need to consider job implications, school zones, logistics, and the costs of moving, such as selling a house, traveling to find a new home, paying for movers, or renting a U-Haul truck to do it yourself. Not to mention the potential cost of deciding you do not like your new city or country and wanting to move again. Story 49. One example is having a personal chef or a full-time housekeeper. For many wealthy people, this is a normal part of life, but it can be eye-opening to realize how much time and stress it saves compared with cooking and cleaning for yourself. This advantage often goes unnoticed because it is simply integrated into their routine. What do you think? Any other examples you have noticed? Story 50. They dive into their giant mountain of gold coins as if it were a swimming pool. Story 51. They do not question the price of things. They never wonder if an item is worth the cost or whether they can afford it. They just buy it. Not big purchases like cars, but everyday items. We do not have an ice maker. They just buy one. If the vacuum cleaner is not working properly, they immediately buy a new one. I am doing okay financially now, but I still have to pause and consider whether we can afford certain items or wait a paycheck or two. Some people have no concerns about money, and it shows when they tell you they own a particular item and say it is so wonderful that you must buy one. I am not buying that. Story 52. For my purposes, I define rich as beginning in the upper middle class. Your average lawyer is rich by middle age under this standard. I work with lawyers, so they offer useful examples. First, the idea that someone does not have savings is often treated as a choice or even a moral failing. The possibility that a person might literally have nothing to set aside once non-negotiable costs are paid does not compute for many. A person who is rich by my definition might not be saving, but they could, and they know it. Another difference is that a rich person often does not know exactly how much money they have. They might estimate a certain number of thousands in an investment account, tens of thousands in a retirement account, some vague thousands in checking, and perhaps a larger vague amount elsewhere. By contrast, a poor person, because money is held in fewer places and because of absolute need, almost certainly knows their balance down to the penny. A rich person can shop for groceries without weighing the cost of one item versus another. The deciding factor is usually something other than price. They prefer a particular brand, a certain cut of beef, and do not notice that many types of produce can vary in price dramatically with the seasons. Similarly, a rich person can choose where to eat without calculating whether it is possible. From the same source comes spontaneity. The more money you have, the less you need to plan everything. That helps explain why many poor people do not believe someone with money who says that money cannot buy happiness. If you are poor, much of what you can give the world is consumed by planning and managing a resource that is finite and often absent. Put differently, rich people are not stressed about basic living tasks, so they frequently have more energy left for other pursuits. Story 53. Being fit is easier with money. If you are wealthy, it is much easier to have a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables, pay for a gym membership or home gym equipment, and afford healthy meals away from home. Finding time to work out is difficult when you work 2 jobs and must do your own house and yard work, which consumes free time. Maintaining the energy to work out is hard if your job is physical or requires standing all day. Story 54. 2 old guys arguing over who has a better golf handicap. Story 55. The biggest issue is how much free time is consumed by day-to-day tasks. Most of my week is spent at work, doing chores at home, shopping for groceries, running errands, and, if I am lucky, getting a couple of hours to play video games on the weekend. I do not have children, yet life is full of tasks that need attention. Hiring someone to handle your finances, another person to do your shopping and meal preparation, and perhaps a third to manage household chores is extremely expensive, but it gives you real free time. Wealthy people may understand the cost, but many would be surprised by how much time those services actually return, time most of us never get. Story 56. Something breaks in the house. Oh, that sucks. Guess I'll just buy a new one. It's a great feeling that many people are not self-aware of until someone tells them. Story 57. They wear those odd clothes for rich people that try to look casual but do not. Story 58. Many people believe they are self-made, that they got where they are entirely on merit, and that anyone else could do the same if they chose to. This is not to say rich people do not work hard. The rich and successful people I know had better education, private tutoring, resources that aided their learning, and opportunities for first jobs at their parents' business or a family friend's business. They received a loan from the bank of mom and dad or investment capital from a family member. I have a comfortable life after growing up in poverty without any of those advantages, and I still know I did not do it on my own. The government support that some people deride kept me from starving while I worked to become successful. The pull yourself up by the bootstraps chorus assumes that people have bootstraps in the first place. Story 59. My rich friends say that instead of 20 euros we can spend 40 and have a nicer meal. Story 60. I would describe casual addictions as when someone displays typical addictive behavior but gets a free pass because of wealth or power, so everyone ignores it. For example, having 3 or more martini lunches every day and no one bats an eye because you are an executive. Or how we accepted that high-powered investment bankers were intoxicated around the clock. Story 61. Saying that you are oppressed by the government while driving a sports car and owning a yacht. Story 62. I will get downvoted for this, but here goes. It's hilarious. The first time Donald Trump was running, there was discussion about immigrants not being allowed in the United States. What did Kelly Osbourne say on The View? Who will clean our toilets? Story 63. When I move into a neighborhood, I do not know my neighbors. Wealthy people, however, know who their neighbors are and what they do for work. They understand networking. Story 64. Do I pay the rent or go to the dentist? I need to do both, but sometimes I can afford the rent and not the dentist, and other times I can afford the dentist and not the rent. Robbing Peter to pay Paul is something wealthy people do not experience. Story 65. When you lose your job, You take time off to study or travel instead of searching for another job as soon as possible. Story 66. The "I'll just get a new one" mentality comes easily with expensive items, especially subscriptions to streaming services, electronics like game consoles and television, or even hiring someone so you do not have to learn to do it yourself because it is less hassle. I am not talking about hiring painters. I mean fun things we would save for very special occasions, if we even considered them. One time during a huge summer party at my aunt's house, she ran to the street and came down her long driveway to the back of the house in an ice cream truck. She waved like a queen, hanging out of the side of the truck. We were all complaining about the heat, and she saw the kids running to their parents for cash after hearing the ice cream truck. In my culture, though not mandatory, it looks kind of shady to have people pay for things at an event you are hosting. Both sides of my family grew up very poor, and my aunt would do anything for children. She never wanted anyone to feel inferior. Everyone should have a good time and equal access to everything. While we all swarmed the truck, my aunt asked the vendor how much he made in a day. He told her, and she whipped out a checkbook and gave him more than that. She asked, "When do you finish? If you spend the next couple of hours here, like 2, you can go home early to your family, right?" That was incredible. It is still legendary to this day. Shout out to my auntie. She is incredibly caring and supportive. I was going through some really hard things at home and called her. I had to pay my tuition and had no resources. Despite trying my best, I cried to my aunt that $2,000 stood between me and getting my degree. She took the information to the bank, paid it, and told me, "Sweetie, you're graduating." Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.